as you know, we being in the FM industry, we are vital to continue our services, and we have been working quite proactively with our customers to assure them that we are in this together. There were several measures that we needed to take to overcome some of the challenges that came across due to the situation. So some that are worth highlighting are the planned preventive maintenances, PPMs as we call it. They had to be updated. For example, high contact areas such as elevator buttons, door handles, they had to be cleaned at a much higher frequency. In some cases, we stopped all the non-critical PPMs. For example, the PPMs that had to be done in residences. And this was done to reduce exposure on both sides. For example, a major residence complex for airline crew was a total no-no for everyone's interest to get into apartments unless it's a reactive call and something very, very urgent. We intensified the cleaning and disinfection as per local regulatory requirements and also the evolving international best practices. We had to ramp up the personal protective equipment guidelines for everyone, train them on how to use them properly, because that's very important. Most of us are not trained on using this special PPEs. All the supervisors, technicians, frontline workers, they had to be trained and reminded again. Also, they had to be motivated day in, day out because of all the fear and panic that's out there. We had to update some of our standard operating procedures or SOPs for cleaning. So we had to be very detailed in how do they carry out cleaning to have preventive measures in place, the disinfection procedures, the curative measures. We launched a BioClean team, which was licensed by Dubai municipality. And with this service, we added value through professional cleaning and disinfection services to workplaces, homes, and communities, which in a way strengthens our capability to safeguard everyone in the light of the ongoing pandemic. Finally, we have put up a value addition plan and service for helping our customers to manage their vacant or near vacant properties, since everyone's working from home today. But then there's a different way you need to deal with empty or near empty buildings. And this is more relevant to commercial towers or school customers, which will ensure that when things are normalized again, they can get up and running within a matter of hours, if not minutes.
Measures that Ravi has talked about are simply the measures that we are putting in our buildings, because community managers completely rely on their FM service providers to act in the operational aspects of the building. And so certainly the things that there's two parts to it, and Ravi has touched on this also. There's what we've had to do internally as a company to address the work from home issues, and secondly, externally, what are we doing in our buildings? How are we managing this whole COVID-19 crisis? And a lot of the things that Ravi's talked about, high contact areas, stepping up in disinfection, stepping up sanitisation, are all measures that we've applied. But if we looked at it on a step-by-step basis, the community manager is very involved in the communication aspect of what's happening. And so clearly, Ravi talks about the concerns and the alarm that the blue collar, the operational guys would have about transportation to and from the site, working in the site. Their cares and needs must be looked after and respected, because there is a lot of concern and fear and uncertainty out there. But also within the buildings, the residents in our community, the same thing applies to them. So they're very concerned about what they can and they cannot do. They want to make sure that their building is safe, that we're dealing adequately with the people that come and go in the communities, such as delivery drivers. If anyone, unfortunately, has had to move in or move out during this period, we've had to be very careful how we manage that process. And because people are concerned, not so much about the people coming and going in their building, but the impact it has on their building and keeping them safe. So raising people's awareness is key to us. We've found that most of our FM, if not all of our FM service providers, are very aware of what they need to do. And so we don't need to work in in what they're instructing their staff or what they're doing operationally. We rely on them to do that. But The impact that the operations have on the residents and the community is more of what we're concerned about. And so communication is very important, stepping up, digital and online campaigns, regularly meeting with our staff members. And so obviously we've enhanced our cleaning and sanitisation procedures in offices and communities, especially in the high traffic areas. Again, Ravi alluded to making sure high contact areas are regularly cleaned and disinfected, like call buttons and elevators, balustrades, all of that sort of thing. We're increasing frequency of cleaning services to help ensure that facilities and premises are well disinfected and thereby reducing infection risk. And more importantly, in the operational aspects of the building, we clearly have to engage and alert with all of our communities, installation of sanitisers in all common areas, reception areas, besides elevators, stepping up communication to tell people how they need to use those sanitisation, all the washing hand procedures, all of those sorts of things. We've had to close all of our common amenities in the building, such as gyms and swimming pools. All of those possibilities where people would congregate, not practice social distancing. We've had to be very careful to make sure that is taken, that potential threat is taken out. So all of the common amenities in the buildings have been closed. This has also given us the opportunity to address costs in maintaining those things. So clearly we can, if we're closing facilities down, we can put them in a holding maintenance program. So there's less money being spent by the community where we're just maintaining a facility rather than having it in an operational mode. So that's been a big help to us. Social distancing in elevators. We've actually got a slide in the presentation which shows where we're marking clearly on the floor of the elevator and limiting numbers of people going into the elevator to ensure that social distancing and physical distancing has been maintained. So operationally, we're all very clear on what we have to do, and we take hands with our FM service providers to make sure that is being done. And by and large, we're all working together and we all have the same goals. From an internal aspect, from our company, it was very important. We were prepared for this, obviously, work from home scenario and having to work remotely. So we thoroughly tested all of our systems. In fact, weeks before this happened, we had a dummy run, if you like. We got everyone working from home to make sure that our systems all worked. We make sure that we all had adequate VPN access to our internal systems, shared drives. We made sure that all of our visual communication tools worked, and we knew that there was going to be a changed world, and what we're doing now is our new reality. And it's interesting in that we've found that probably because we have so many different offices, we're based in Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Ras Al Khaimah, Sharjah. We have satellite offices in the buildings that we manage all over Dubai and Abu Dhabi and those other Emirates. And we've found that we're actually spending more time talking to each other and communicating than we have done in normal operations. So we have found that we're really drawing together as a team internally and also externally with our partners in the buildings.
I think the world will certainly get better soon. The economy will definitely bounce back with resilience, and we FM professionals will be one of the significant enablers, as we did not stop working during the pandemic. We are still working, we're fighting this. COVID-19, I think, is going to leave a lasting impact on our individual, collective, and societal behaviors in several areas. More so for the FM industry because of the vital role that we play in everyone's lives to keep them safe, to keep them secure. I believe that we FM providers will be remembered for the selfless service our teams have provided to various sectors. As an example that stands out is one of our housekeeping staff was featured in a leading local daily newspaper for providing invaluable service while attending to the isolation wards and general premises at a hospital. So first and foremost, these unsung heroes, they will earn their due respect. That's quite important. I think that will change going forward. I also believe that the significance and perception of the FM industry in general will change for good we'll see a surge in organizations approaching FM professionals for our services as opposed to managing things on their own. Furthermore, as FM providers, I think we'll have to learn from whatever routines we have established during the COVID-19 situation. And some of these schedules will stick around, both for soft and hard services. Some of the integrated facilities management providers like ourselves, I think we'll also see a growing demand for certain services like biocleaning, disinfection, providing dedicated on-site HSC officers and so on.
Right. Alan?
Yes, so clearly, how do we come out of this? That's the big question that's been asked around the world right now. Many countries have gone into, if you like, a Category 4 lockdown. And the question is, once you've flattened the curve or you've certainly reduced the number of infections, how do you actually go back to normal? Yeah. So again, the two things, I think that the way that we work, clearly, we've all had to become accustomed to working from home and accustomed to that environment. So that's certainly going to change the way, I think, in the future, that not only our industry, but many industries are going to address the issue of how do we all work. Working remotely has been very, very heavily tested around the world, and that's, I think, is going to have an absolute impact on the future. In the buildings we manage, clearly people have become far more aware of their own personal health and hygiene. And I think that even without us having to communicate this, people have certainly taken on board the potential risk for them personally. And I think it's going to change behaviour. You mentioned social distancing in elevators. I certainly think that, the days where people would be jamming into an elevator, shoulder to shoulder, are probably over and done with. And that's just going to come naturally. That's not going to be any instruction that we have to issue. We've got to all be very aware of, this crisis is, although people have talked about pandemics for years and years and years, and all of a sudden it's become real. So it's absolutely clear to all of us that, whilst this is our new normal, this is not going to go away. This is going to change the way we view our operations, our working environment for a very long distance into the future. The other impact that clearly we have to deal with is that people are in a very precarious position in terms of maybe not being able to keep their job, lose their job, not have an income. And that has a massive impact in our towers in terms of the revenue we require to collect in order to maintain the buildings. And so we've had to come up with some unique solutions. The local regulator has made a very clear message that, for example, there'll be no penalty fees on unpaid service charges, that people should be given payment plan options. So whilst that is going to help those people that are having their own financial crisis, it certainly that flows down to the actual operational side of the building, in that we have to be able to collect money to pay for the essential operations in a building. And that's going to probably be one of the biggest impacts that we will see as community managers in the future, is managing restricted cash flow and putting that into how do we manage that cash flow with our suppliers. So there's going to be a lot of that type of negotiation in the future between us and our associated suppliers and contractors in the buildings.
We had a lot of things in place. First of all, they also form a part of the society. So they were all concerned with the pandemic situation and the fact that they still have to be on the front line, continue working, being in a vital sector. So first and foremost, we had a lot of sessions to create awareness on what's going around, how can they protect themselves and others, and create a sense of calm and making sure that the right guidelines and safeguards are in place so that they can continue working safely. With that in place, all the awareness and the appropriate use of PPEs, the standard operating procedures were updated, and a lot of trainings were provided to them. Simple fundamentals like some things like Alan had already touched upon, like hand hygiene, These kind of fundamentals were included in toolbox talks and campaigns. A lot of pep talks every morning with them to go and do their jobs. There was a very detailed emergency response and business continuity plan that we put together, which had a lot of preventive behaviors in place, including rules at sites, rules within accommodations, social distancing, even simple things like when they're having food, they don't need to sit close to each other, some rules around that, so on and so forth. How do they deal with contact tracing and reporting? It's a pandemic situation, it's real out there. There will be some people who will have direct or indirect contacts. So how do they report that? So an online reporting system was put in place, which made it very simple for them to report. There were clear isolation and quarantine rules and guidelines. And it's not just putting these documents together, but also communicating effectively at all levels on what do you need to do if something happens, so that we are planning upfront and not being in a reactive mode later on. For daily operations, there were daily checklists for sites, for offices, for accommodations. All of these had to be updated in light of the ongoing situation. We had to update the operation rules. The escalation matrix had to be clearly communicated. If something happens, how do you communicate at what levels? Even our command and support center staff who take a lot of calls day in, day out. In fact, they work pretty much 24/7. So all of a sudden, they did not have access due to working from home initiative to their very high-tech offices and setups. So we used technology to serve as an enabler so that they could still comfortably take calls from home. Some routines had to be established for them to enable that the calls are being handled efficiently. Media control had to be addressed well. All in all, it was a 360-degree contingency plan that we had to put together. But then these are all the day-to-day operational jobs. Now, what's been happening due to the developments over the past few days is there is a very strong sense of insecurity in people, because we hear a lot of news about economy slowing down and things like that. So even these things had to be addressed, because eventually they affect people. People are working with us to make a living, to support their families, and some sense of security need to be installed into them. So there was a very good initiative from the senior management, right from the CEO. So he sent a note to everyone and also addressed it in several forums that protecting everyone's jobs in these difficult times is his responsibility. And that was received very well, because then they can go to work with a sense of security. And of course, there was a whole security blanket and system created around dealing with, God forbid, if there are any cases, how do we deal with them? Are we prepared to deal with them? Because many of our colleagues are living away from their families, and we are their extended family, so to speak. So HR had to step up, and they had to have a lot of meetings with them, giving them a sense of security so that they can show up to work.
As you said, people, expat population, families living at home, and they're all concerned. Everyone's very concerned about what the future holds for them. There's also just the nature of transportation, living quarters, and all of those things. We have to be very, very careful, and HR have been working day and night, particularly with the operational teams, to make sure that is done. Having said that, that's more of a facilities management. They tend to have more of the blue-collar on-site staff, whereas community management is more of a management team. So for us, working remotely has been enabled by our focus on technology. Also, we have to provide platforms and channels for our people in our buildings to work without having to have contact with us. So rather than them coming to an office to pay, we set up quick pay channels. We set up all sorts of alternatives for them, so that they don't need to make that contact. They can work remotely. I mean, we removed cashiers from our offices 12 months ago. We just don't deal in cash anymore. So those kind of things have been very important to us. But probably looking at what the future holds, when we're in a lockdown, essential services are the things that everyone focuses on, that, you know, people can continue working with essential services. However, when we start looking at backing away and stepping down from the lockdown, you'll probably see things moving away from essential services to those that are safe to operate. And Ravi actually touched on it by saying, you know, we're going to have to, it'll be a complete new world, and that we will have to be able to track contact. If in the event there is an unfortunate repeat of an infection, we need to be able to show who has come and entered into our building. So we'll be using technology to take pay far closer attention to our ability to track contact, and every business that starts operating once the ban is somewhat lifted will have to provide the same. Whoever walks into your shop, you're going to need to know who those people are and how you can contact them. And we've recently moved from SAP to SAP HANA. Our whole platform is an integrated platform which allows us to take every process that we have in our organisation and automate it. So whether it's a leave request, or whether it's an expense report, or whether it's an authorisation for a payment, everything now is done automatic. It is done online, and so it removes the need again for people to be physically present.
Although the technology has always been there, the work from home policies had been in place, but all of a sudden being thrown into a situation where everyone pretty much working in offices are now working from home, we had to train them up on how to make more efficient use of these technologies. In fact, we have been mindful of challenges such as working parents with kids attending online schools and catering to family needs. How do they address this? And of course, use technology to deal with these kind of situations as well. I would also like to make a special mention of our happiness management team. And this is quite important to our sustainability. If people are not happy, we'll not build a sustainable organization. We do have a dedicated happiness manager. Even this team had to now embrace technology to engage with colleagues through an online collaboration platform. The response has been phenomenal, and it's indeed giving us a sense of being connected. Regarding your question on how things are going to change post-COVID-19, I think some of these virtual workplace routines will be strengthened further. In fact, more and more people will have the flexibility to work from homes without any compromise on efficiencies. In fact, I'd like to argue that the efficiencies can be improved after the routines that we have established are being practiced by everyone in several aspects.
So what we have found is that clearly the communication aspect we've found internally has been vastly enhanced, really. Rather than physically walking from one office to another office to speak to somebody, it's really just a touch of a button now, and you can have a whole group of people collaborating in a meeting. And we have found that because we're working from home, we feel we need to be in closer contact with each other. So, we're setting up daily schedules whereby we're keeping in contact with every one of our team members to make sure that, and it's not a big brother is watching you scenario, it's simply just trying to make sure that everyone feels that they're being properly managed, and they're being heard, and their concerns are being met. So that has probably been one of the major things that we have found, is just the enhancement in internal communication between groups of people. Clearly, it's freed up a lot of time by automating processes, whereby we used to have to, have a stack of signing books that you'd have to wade through on a daily basis. I mean, that's just gone now. We don't deal with that anymore. It's a very simple automated process. Approvals online for all manner of documents that we now process in the paperless environment. So I think more than anything else, it's proved to us that in this environment you can succeed. The operational aspects are a little more challenging, where you have to do things on a site, and that's the sort of thing that Ravi will speak to in terms of the concerns that the operational staff have, and how they can be alleviated.
Right. Ravi?
what we have seen that it works, and there has been no compromise on the efficiency of our operations. A majority of our workforce, however, like Alan already prompted, it's comprised of frontline workers who cannot work from home. They have to be out there for obvious reasons because they need to be physically present at sites. So for these guys, they used to rely on operations managers who sometimes had to be on the site to work with them. So some online meetings are replacing those meetings. So it's working efficiently. The communication, it's actually improving, I would say, rather than the other way around, because now people know they can just pick up the phone and call someone, and someone out there knows that they depend on me. So operations has been super efficient during these times. Also, what has been critical for us is to keep the customers updated on what's going on, because just like us, many of their management staff are not able to be on the sites. So this whole technology aspects that we have in place, be it telecommunication or online communications, the CAFM system, it's really helping us to stay in total control, and at the same time keep updating our customers and giving them a sense of security and control.